Good afternoon, and welcome back everyone to our video series where we discuss everyday legal topics with TLR Law. TLR Law makes law accessible for the average Canadian, including if you're an executor and you need help navigating the court system. The job of an executor can be very complex and stressful, and the courts are not, surprise, surprise, not in the customer service business. So going it alone can be difficult and frustrating. Today we'll talk about the executor role, some of the common challenges that you'll face if you are an executor, and why hiring a lawyer to help navigate the process is often a very good idea. My name is Adam Dooley. I'm your co-host, along with Philippe Richet, principal lawyer and co-owner of TLR Law Office. Hey Philippe, how are you?
Good, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're just back, both of us, from two different Manitoba beaches, and we're rested and relaxed and ready to talk about the court system, which will just put us in a lousy mood, right?
Right. Well, that's okay. I'm already in a bit of a lousy mood. As you know, I was in Clear Lake and I ran into some poison ivy. So I'm sitting here in my shorts. Full disclosure, everyone, this is one of those situations where you only see the top half. But I am wearing shorts today because I have poison ivy on my legs because I wore shorts to go hiking through the woods. So wow. There you go.
I didn't get poison ivy. We did experience the annual fish fly infestation in Gimli, but we had a lovely time besides that.
I'll take fish flies over poison ivy anytime, Adam.
I will too. Let's start with what an executor is, because I think a lot of us will become executors at some point in our lives, but many people don't even understand what the role is. Can you tell us a little bit about what goes into being an executor, and how do you find yourself in that role to begin with?
Yeah, so you'll find yourself to be named an executor typically when a close one. So if you're married, typically you're usually the executor for your spouse or your common law relationship, whatever that is. You might find yourself as an executor for parents. So if you're the responsible child, you will be likely named yourself or some of your siblings. You may find yourself as executor for an uncle, or a cousin, those types of things. Sometimes you're named as an alternate executor, which is not usual. Usually the person named first is the one who usually acts, but sometimes that person is no longer available. So there's a number of situations, but typically it'll be somebody close to you, somebody you know, who trusts you. And now hopefully that person has talked to you and let you know about it, but yeah, those are kind of the types of situations that will arise, and like you said, Adam, I think that happens. Has it happened to you? I think you've been named executor.
I am. Well, actually, I'm one of a committee of executors, which I guess is a different kind of scenario. But myself and two of my siblings will be executors acting together for my mother when she passes, and we have to look after her estate. And we've already talked about hiring a lawyer to help us, because we know that, especially in our situation, we're all in different cities, and it's just going to make it so much easier if a lawyer in her hometown is there to help us.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. You can be named executor on your own, but you can also be named as multiple executors. Typically it'll be somebody very close to you, and you may find yourself either an alternate or working with some other people. So coordination is certainly important in those cases. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk specifically about why you might want to hire a lawyer to help navigate. What specifically does a lawyer provide or help you with when you are the executor and you're engaging the lawyer to kind of as a consultant, I guess? What benefit do you bring to the table?
Right. So we, as lawyers, we're legal counsel for the estate. So legally speaking, the executor represents the interests of the deceased person, and the wishes of that person, and has a responsibility towards the beneficiaries of the estate. So an estate is a trust. Trust law is something that's existed at common law for a very long time. And an estate is just a form of trust like that. So the executor, you'll often have heard the term trustee is an executor and trustee. So that means they become the legal owners of all of the assets of the deceased, but not for their own purpose, for the purpose of the beneficiaries. They may themselves be a beneficiary, but they're responsible not only to themselves, but to the other beneficiaries, and they have to follow the instructions that are set out in the will.
Yeah, and that's where the name comes from, in fact, right? The executor executes the will, right, according to the legal wishes of the deceased.
Right. I've heard some, if you want to get into the theoretical part, you're executor up until the point where you determine what the assets actually are, because one of the first roles of the executor is to pay off the debts. And until the debts are ascertained and paid off, you don't really know what the value of the estate is. And in trust law, there's the three certainties, and you need to know what the items in trust actually are. So you don't actually become a trustee until a little later on in the process. But that's theoretical. You don't really need to worry about that. You're an executor and trustee. That's how most wills are drafted. They are essentially the same role throughout this process. You got to pay the bills, and what's left over, you got to follow the will and
right.
funds or assets.
Right, exactly. Now, one of the things that people often equate executors and settling an estate is with the concept of probate. And I've talked to many people who've been the executors in the past, and they get really uptight just mentioning probate because it causes a lot of stress. Now, what is probate, and why is it something that executors seem to dread?
Yeah, I think the reason they seem to dread it is because it's kind of an unknown word. Everybody's heard it, but it's an ancient, a common law term. It's very specific. It's got a legal process, and whenever you mention law to people, they get uptight for various reasons and good reasons at times. But people often get nervous whenever you hear court, whenever you hear the law. You have that added pressure of, oh, I don't want to break the law. I want to make sure that I'm always on side of the law. So I think that it creates that idea of, well, there's this process. We don't really know what it means. Until I became a lawyer, I'd heard the word probate a lot, and I never really understood what it meant. And it wasn't actually until I started practicing that I fully understood what probate meant, what it actually means. But essentially, forget the word probate. Just think of it as a process. The best example I like to use is when you make a will, the wills that we draft at our office are drafted using Word document. Everybody has a Word not micro. I'm talking like it's 1990 here. Everybody has a computer with Word on it.
Right.
And you can type up any document. That's what we use to prepare wills, and we use printers that are similar to home printers to print them off. And under the Wills Act of Manitoba, if you name somebody as an executor, that person, the moment you die, becomes the executor, has the legal power to start managing your affairs.
Right. Now, so they basically have control over the legal control over the estate.
Immediately. As soon as you die, the moment you die, poof, all of the powers that you have to manage your own affairs vest into the now executor of your estate. That is
so they can march down to the bank and withdraw all the money because that's
right.
Their right, right?
Exactly. So imagine you're the bank teller. This is your second day on the job. It's your first real job. Before that, you worked in restaurants. Not that working in a restaurant is not a real job, but you're a young adult and you become you work at the bank, and you've got this in your mind is your first real job. And somebody comes up to you with a Word document printed on a home computer, on a home printer. It says, "Hi, I'm the executor of Adam Dooley's estate. Adam passed away suddenly yesterday. I need to withdraw all the funds from that account immediately, please, so I can distribute them." That poor teller will be in an awful state at that point, understandably so. What protection do they have? Anybody could show up with those kind of documents, and banks are liable for that. If they give out the money to the wrong person, it's fraud, then the bank, guess what? The bank could be held liable for that. So right. Probate is a process by which you can send the will to the court with an application, some documents, and you're asking the court to essentially put their stamp of approval on the will. And then that stamp of approval, you can take it and you can bring it back to the bank and you can give it to the bank teller or the bank manager and say, here's the letter of probate. Here's the proof that you need that will protect you from any further claims. And now I can take the money. So that probate is a process by which third parties that hold the asset, so the banks or the financial institutions, will be now protected. Nobody can come after them afterwards to say you gave it to the wrong person. They can just say, wait a minute, look, I've got the letters of probate here. I'm satisfied, and that prevents their liability. So they're no longer liable for that. So that's why you have probate. It's to protect the third parties that hold the assets from future liability. That's why we use probate.
So what's so we're executor. We've gone through. We've got probate. We're now in a position where we can distribute the assets. We've paid off the immediate bills. What's next in the process?
So you pay off, like you said, you pay off your funeral expenses if those haven't been done yet. You need to pay the accountant or the bookkeeper to prepare the final tax returns. You need to pay off all the debts. So if there's a mortgage on a property, then if the property's sold, you need to pay off the mortgage. Lawyers can help you with that. If there's credit cards, you pay those off, credit card debts. Your Shaw Cable, your MTS account, your Rogers account, all those you have to take care of. If the person's receiving old OAS or CPP, you have to notify Service Canada of their death so that you stop receiving those payments. So the person's entitled, the deceased or the estate is entitled to keep what they receive in OAS and CPP in the month of death, but not beyond.
Right.
So there's all those small details that have to be taken care of. And then after that, you need to follow the will. So if the will says that they're giving $10,000 to cancer care, $5,000 to the Humane Society, $3,000 to their cousin Bob, $500 to each grandchild, and then the rest is to be distributed equally amongst the children, then that's what they do. They start writing checks, or they instruct the lawyer that's holding the funds, if the lawyer is holding the funds, to write the checks, and they start distributing the funds. And then once all of that is done, there's a few other things that need to be done at the end, like a clearance certificate from Revenue Canada to wrap it up. And then they should just hang on to those documents indefinitely afterwards to show that they have, in case something comes up at a later date that they didn't know about, that they can deal with it.
Right. There's lots of little steps though, right? You have to advertise in case there's any debtors outstanding. You have to do a few things like that as well, right?
Those are options as well that's more for the protection of the executors. So there's a number of small details like that need to be or should be looked after. As lawyers, we certainly, those are tasks that we advise our clients on taking care of when they do it. So we have checklists available. There's a checklist available on our website. People can go to it and download it. That kind of goes through the responsibilities of the executor and the responsibilities of the lawyer. So there are two distinct roles to be played. In fact, when we're engaged to represent an estate, we have to send out a form to all of the residual beneficiaries as well as the executor that outlines what the roles of the executor or personal representative is. So that's the same role, and what the role of the lawyer is. And then there's a list of items on that document. That's a court prescribed document that has to go out. There's a list of items on there that are the responsibility of each one. We could go through all of them right now, but I'm afraid we'd run out of time, and we would put the one or two viewers we currently have to sleep.
Well, we know that these videos are well viewed after they're recorded. So, you mentioned the website. It's at tlrlaw.ca. You have a number of free downloads there for a number of common legal issues. But I wanted to just get back to why it's beneficial to hire a lawyer. We've gone through probate, which can be a chore. We're now going through this checklist that you've just described. It's for the average person who is doing this probably for the one and only time they'll do it in their entire lives. It's you have a lot of responsibility, you have a certain amount of liability, and to me it just seems to make sense that you'd want to have a legal professional there to say, this entire checklist is taken care of, and you've done this exactly the way it should be done.
Right. So the major role of the lawyer in this is to help you get through probate. If probate isn't needed, and it's not always needed, you may not need to consult the lawyer that much. You may need to consult the lawyer only once to see, what are my responsibilities, what are the things that I should do, and we can advise appropriately on that. But if you're the biggest role we play is usually helping help people navigate the probate process. So the probate process is actually a court process. You don't go to court. You don't have to show up in front of a judge and bow and what you have. But there is a process. There is an application that you have to put together. There are affidavits that have to be put together. There are court forms you have to fill out and complete. And as you mentioned in your intro, the court. You never actually talk to the judge. You'll talk to representatives at the counter. They're not in the customer service business, and they can't give out any advice on how to fill that because they take the position, rightfully so, that it's legal advice. So they'll give you the forms, which are very court-like looking forms that are, if you've never dealt with them before, that can be intimidating because it uses legalese in the forms, and they're very official. And if they're not done right, they get rejected. But they won't tell you beforehand how to do it. So while the court won't provide you any guidance because they take the position that it's legal advice, when you submit it, they'll reject it and they'll tell you why they've rejected it because it doesn't meet this, that, or the other thing. We do this on a regular basis. On a weekly basis, we file requests for probate. And even we get some that are rejected from time to time for various reasons. It's hard to know. Sometimes it's the person that's there, how they receive it. It could be a complex situation where perhaps we're resealing a grant of probate that was issued in another jurisdiction. So there's a lot of technicalities related to that. And navigating that on your own, if you've never navigated a court process, is very frustrating. Now, I haven't met anybody who's done it, but I probably wouldn't meet somebody who's done it because if they've managed to navigate it by themselves, they wouldn't need to talk to me about it. But we have helped clients in the past who have tried to do it themselves and just throwing their hands up in frustration, saying, I don't understand what they want, and it's just easier to go through a lawyer to do it.
Right.
And typically it'll be faster if we help you do it, but it's a court process and you're allowed to represent yourself. And if you're the executor of an estate, you're allowed to do that on your own. And if you wanted to try it, I won't be the one to tell you not to.
Fair enough. Is the role of the executor the same for every estate? Is there a nuance to the role? Does it change situationally? Like, is every executor situation pretty much identical?
So the law that applies to the executors and the responsibilities and the liabilities are the same, right? It's the law is the law is the law. The statute of not Lady Liberty, but the law is she's blindfolded. Yeah. She's got a sword in one hand. The blindfold means it applies strictly to everybody. The nuances and the changes usually arrive from the relationship in the family. So there's an added dimension of complexity. You're dealing with an emotional situation where a loved one has passed away. There's money usually involved and assets of value. There's maybe some competing interests from the kids. There might be some tension in the family that's happened over the years or that's always been in place. And then it becomes emotionally and socially very difficult to navigate. Bringing a lawyer in will often help those situations because the lawyer is the impartial arbiter and can assist everybody in doing every step along the way. And we make sure that when we do these things, especially if there's tension in the family, that we get signed releases from people acknowledging that everything was done appropriately to avoid future litigation and future problems.
So you're a family peacemaker as well, then.
Well, sort of, right? It's the intimidation factor of having a lawyer involved. People will say, if they were dealing directly with you, they'd give you an earful, but if they're dealing with the lawyer, they may be more reserved in their response. And that oftentimes just having that additional element in the process will be enough to navigate the legal process at least. It's not going to fix the long-term problems in the family, but it will help you through an otherwise very difficult and emotional period.
So we've gone through a few of these challenges that executors might face if they don't hire a lawyer. Can you just talk a little bit more? Have we missed anything? What if an executor doesn't hire a lawyer? It's certainly possible that you can manage it yourself, right? It just might take a little bit longer. You might have to make more visits to the court. You know, all of those things. And as you just mentioned, you won't have that referee by your side, kind of arbitrating the family disputes.
Right, but there are times where it's appropriate for somebody to not use a lawyer. So if probate is not required, meaning that the institution's holding the assets. So if you don't have any real property like a house or a cottage or a farm or vacant land, if you don't have any real property and the money, the institutions holding the money, the banks or the financial institutions do not ask for letters of probate, then you don't need probate. Most cases where a spouse dies, the surviving spouse won't need a lawyer. Because probate is usually not required in those cases because there's a lot of provisions in the law that allow assets to roll from one spouse to the other automatically. Typically, homes are jointly held, so the surviving spouse just becomes the new owner. So in those kind of situations, you probably don't need a lawyer. You can call one just to kind of go over, you know, this is our situation. Do we need a lawyer? Mm-hmm. It's usually an hour consult, and that's about it, and that's all we charge for on those things. And then they go on their own and they fill out the forms with Service Canada and to get the pension, CPP rolled over. They talk to their pension funds and et cetera, life insurance companies and all that. And everything is handled with a lawyer. So there are situations that have happened quite often in this, like a spouse situation, where probate is not required. If probate is required, somebody asks for it, you can try navigating that on your own. Like as the lawyer who, we make our living doing this, I'm not going to tell somebody that they shouldn't try it on their own. I'm just going to warn the person that be prepared for a bureaucratic process with very little guidance, and it could take a while. But if somebody wants to try it on their own, by all means. And if you do and you're successful, please let me know. I'd love to hear about those situations. But if you want to take care of it more rapidly, we can certainly help you handle that.
And now, talk a little bit about your services. So your law firm, you have a number of offices in town. And you do an awful lot of estate work. I know that. So just how do you approach estate work with a client? Starting from the point of do you need a will and writing that will through to kind of becoming engaged for an executor, because you can be engaged through the entire process or even just parts of it, correct?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of questions in there. So the services we provide in relation to estates are twofold, with the two sides of the coin, so to speak. We help people prepare their documents to begin with. So if a couple or a person comes to us and says, we're thinking about when we pass away, we want to put our affairs in order, let's take care of that. So we'll go through the process and talk about their wishes and how they want to process, how they want to distribute their assets. We'll give them advice. We'll tell them what other people have done. We'll ask them what they're trying to achieve. And
who's going to look after the dog for them?
Yeah, who's going to look after the dog? What's the best way to distribute the funds, and should it be a percentage, should it be fixed, and how do we get the money to the grandchildren, and what happens if we want money to go but we don't want them to receive the money until they're 25 years old, or unless they're going to school, those kind of questions. Charities, if they want to leave money to charities, there's certain clauses we have to put in there, and there's some advice that we have to give on that. So there's a number of factors that come into play, so we can help people prepare those documents to begin with. But then we're dealing with the person who will eventually die, and then the other side of it, we're dealing with the executor then of the person who has passed away, who now has the will, and comes to us and say, okay, we need to take care of this. The bank has told us we need to provide them with letters of probate, or there's a house that they lived in, or that my dad lived in, my mom predeceased, we need to sell the house. So in those cases, we know that
cottage
a cottage, right?
You know, those complications that come up between siblings, right?
Right. So in those cases, we know that probate is required. So we'll usually start the process then. We'll advise them what we need, give them the list of information they need to provide us. We'll provide the documents, prepare the documents. Once we have everything we need and the documents are prepared, we'll meet with the client. We'll sign everything. We'll submit the application for probate to the court. We'll receive the letters of probate afterwards, and then depending on what role the clients want us to play, we can gather all the funds in our trust account and distribute the funds on behalf of the executor, or we can just advise the executor on how to get all those funds together and put them in an account, and what's the best way to distribute the funds once they have all the funds and the debts are paid. And all the other details like the notice to creditors and the filing income tax returns and all that kind of stuff. So we help, but we don't do the filings, but we tell them what they need to do.
Well, I know you guys do a terrific job, and you've got a lot of great Google reviews that attest to that. So thank you very much for giving us some of the benefits of your insight and your expertise here today. You and your team are very, very easy to work with and very knowledgeable. To our viewers today, you're very welcome. To our viewers today, thank you for watching. Please bookmark and share this video, especially if you know somebody who is an executor or will be an executor. This could be very useful for them. If you're looking for more legal insights for your everyday life, TLR Law is hosting a a do it with you legal workshop on September the 23rd. So this is for business owners. Business owners will walk away with more than $1,000 in important legal documents for their business, including employee contracts, guidelines for employee policies, an anti-spam policy, and much more. You'll get all of those legal documents at a fraction of the cost and have it done in a single morning, which sounds like a terrific deal coming from a business owner myself. Early bird pricing will be available next week, so please keep an eye out for that. Leave a comment below or contact TLR Law if you'd like to know more. And please like and share this live stream and like the TLR Law Facebook and Instagram accounts if you haven't already. I just want to close by reminding everyone that TLR now has 3 locations. Congratulations on your growth. There's the HQ is at the foot of the Provencher Bridge in St. Boniface, and you offer services in both languages, French and English. You also have an office on Pembina Highway at Markham Road and at Sargent Avenue and Wall. Please visit TLR Law's website at tlrlaw.ca, where you can subscribe to Philippe's very useful newsletter and read some of his past blog posts. That's it for today. Thank you again, Philippe, and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thanks, Adam.